The air hung heavy over the dusty backroads of Holly Springs, Mississippi, that September evening in 2002. A heat wave had lingered longer than expected, leaving the sun-scorched earth and the sweet smell of magnolia blossoms mixed with the faint odor of creosote from the railway tracks. 16-year-old Lila Monroe walked home from her shift at the corner market, her apron still dusted with flour from the bread aisle. It was a walk she had made hundreds of times, past the old Baptist church, the small playground where children's laughter still echoed, and the rusting water tower that had overlooked the town for generations. Her mother, Cynthia Monroe, often watched from the kitchen window as Lila passed. That evening, she noticed her daughter walking a little faster than usual, glancing over her shoulder as if someone had called her name. By 6:28 p.m., the last rays of sunlight were fading, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks and overgrown yards. Lila had just crossed the intersection of Cherry Street and Magnolia Lane when a dark SUV slowly approached from behind. Its tinted windows hid the driver's face, but in a heartbeat Lila was gone. No scream pierced the stillness, no struggle registered in the quiet streets. Just absence where a vibrant, bright-eyed teenage girl had been moments before. The shock reverberated immediately through Holly Springs. Neighbors who had been tending gardens, sweeping porches, or chatting on stoops reported seeing the vehicle, but no one had a clear description of its driver. Calls to the police came in within minutes, and by 7 p.m. Holly Springs Police Department had dispatched multiple units to search the area. Sheriff Thomas Caldwell, a man known for his steady presence and thorough investigative instincts, coordinated teams that scoured the surrounding streets, nearby wooded patches, and the old rail line. Search dogs picked up faint scents near the intersection, but quickly lost the trail. By 9 p.m., Cynthia Monroe, her voice trembling, made her first radio appeal. "Lila, if you can hear us, please come home, please." The broadcast was replayed throughout the evening on local stations. 100 volunteers joined the police, flashlight beams cutting through the encroaching darkness. Neighbors organized car convoys to search alleyways, abandoned buildings, and the edges of the railroad tracks, calling out Lila's name until their voices were hoarse. Nothing. Inside the Monroe household, the chaos felt unbearable. Cynthia clutched the family Bible while pacing the living room. Her husband, Joseph Monroe, tried to remain calm, but kept glancing at the clock, as if time could be hurried to provide answers. Lila's younger brother, 14-year-old Marcus, hovered silently, unable to comprehend the void left by his sister. The family had always been close-knit. Lila's laughter had been a constant in their lives, and now it was gone. The home seemed suddenly too quiet, the air heavier, filled with the weight of unspoken fears. Lila had been a remarkable teenager. At 5'7", with dark brown hair and freckles that dusted her cheeks in sunlight, she exuded energy and curiosity. Her schoolmates remembered her as driven and compassionate, a girl who volunteered at the local animal shelter and helped tutor younger students in math. Her diary, discovered weeks later untouched on her bedroom desk, revealed dreams of becoming a nurse and moving beyond Holly Springs to pursue education in Jackson. Each entry spoke of empathy, ambition, and a sense of purpose rare in someone so young. Her family had nurtured her independence, proud of her self-reliance and maturity. The initial days of the investigation were intense. Sheriff Caldwell deployed every available officer, coordinating with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. Roadblocks were set up along major highways, and nearby counties were alerted. Local detectives revisited any similar cases from the past decade, hoping for patterns or connections. Witness statements poured in, some conflicting, some inconsistent, but all centered on the dark SUV that seemed to vanish without a trace. Among those first reports was a sighting from Linda Harper, a resident who lived 2 blocks from where Lila disappeared. She recalled seeing a shadowy figure forcing a young girl into a vehicle around 6:30 p.m. Her account was brief, but chilling. "I didn't see the face. Harper told investigators, voice shaking. "But I saw her struggle just a little, and then they were gone." Another neighbor, a teenage boy riding his bicycle, mentioned hearing tires screech on the gravel road at the precise moment Lila vanished, though he couldn't identify the car. Each account added pieces to a puzzle that refused to form a coherent picture. The SUV became the focal point of the investigation. Officers canvassed local dealerships, scouring records for recent purchases, rentals, or stolen vehicles matching the descriptions. The community contributed everything from photographs to scrapbooks, documenting car makes, colors, and models they had seen over the years. Despite exhaustive searches, no definitive lead emerged. Each day that passed without Lila's return heightened the tension, replaced hope with fear, and seeded uncertainty that crept into every corner of Holly Springs. For weeks, volunteers searched abandoned warehouses, the edges of the Tallahatchie River, and long-neglected farmland. Flyers plastered on telephone poles and storefronts displayed her photograph, capturing her vibrant smile and hopeful gaze. Each tip that came in was meticulously followed up by officers. One lead involved a suspicious man seen near the school just days before the disappearance. He was questioned and cleared after providing a verifiable alibi. Another report led investigators to a trailer on the outskirts of town, but the search yielded only dust and broken furniture. Despite the lack of progress, the Monroe family refused to stop hoping. Each night, Cynthia lit a candle by the window, praying for any sign of Lila. Joseph would drive the same route she had taken home, retracing her steps in an attempt to uncover a clue they might have missed. Marcus, still unable to fully comprehend, would leave notes in the window with messages of love and encouragement, simple words meant to reach a daughter lost in the dark unknown. Months passed. The case slowly went cold. Investigators consolidated evidence, creating a file that would sit largely untouched for nearly 2 decades. The SUV, the faint traces of footprints near the intersection, and the scattered tips became pieces of a historical record rather than active leads. The community, once mobilized in urgent search efforts, returned to normal routines, though the absence of answers left a permanent scar. Lila's photograph continued to appear in charity drives, school bulletins, and police press releases, a symbol of the unanswered question haunting Holly Springs. But in the shadows of time, the case had not been forgotten. Detectives meticulously preserved every item of evidence collected in 2002, from fibers and tire impressions to a cigarette butt discovered near the intersection. At the time, DNA testing was in its infancy, and the potential of such minute samples was largely untapped. Every piece, carefully catalogued, waited silently in the evidence room, invisible threads connecting the past to a future that promised technological breakthroughs the world had yet to see. As the years went by, Holly Springs grappled with its absence. Lila's story became part of local law, whispered warnings for young girls walking alone, reminders of vigilance and community responsibility. Her bedroom remained untouched, a shrine to the life that had been, while the family organized vigils on the anniversary of her disappearance. The local church held prayer services every September, and school assemblies included moments of reflection. Her friends graduated, started families, yet always carried a lingering emptiness in memory of the teenager who had vanished one ordinary September evening. Across the country, advancements in forensic science quietly reshaped the possibilities for cold cases like Lila's. Techniques unimaginable in 2002 were emerging, capable of extracting genetic profiles from minuscule samples and identifying connections that had once been impossible. The preservation of the cigarette butt and other evidence became a pivotal factor, though no one knew at the time just how crucial it would become. Before we continue deeper into this story, take a moment to consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Cases like Lila Monroe's show how patience, science, and meticulous investigation can bring answers even decades later. If you are fascinated by how forensic breakthroughs uncover the truth long hidden, you'll want to follow the journey from her disappearance to the moment justice finally arrives. In Holly Springs, 2002 became a year frozen in memory. The echoes of unanswered questions shaped the lives of all who had known Lila. From the candlelit vigils to the careful cataloguing of evidence, the foundations were laid for a resolution that would eventually come. But the story was far from over. Hidden in plain sight, overlooked details, like the cigarette butt, the tire impressions, and the faint footprints, held the key to a truth that would emerge nearly 20 years later, shattering the calm surface of this Mississippi town forever. The years moved on, but Holly Springs never forgot Lila Monroe. Her photograph still hung in the grocery store near her old route home, laminated and slightly faded, a stark reminder of absence. Her friends went to college, some leaving Mississippi entirely. Yet every September they remembered the girl who had vanished from the streets they once ran together. The Monroe family carried the weight of uncertainty with every passing day. Cynthia and Joseph aged, their faces lined not just with the passage of time, but with the anxiety of a daughter lost and a question that refused to fade. What had happened to Lila Monroe? By 2018, technology had evolved in ways the original investigators could never have imagined. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation had established a specialized cold case unit equipped with advanced DNA extraction techniques. Among the first cases reviewed was Lila's disappearance. Lieutenant Karen Fletcher, head of the unit, recalled poring over the decades-old file and immediately recognizing the potential in the carefully preserved evidence. When we saw the cigarette butt, the fibers, and the partial tire tracks, she explained in a later interview, we realized that what had been useless in 2002 could finally speak to us. The cigarette butt was small, seemingly insignificant. Collected from the roadside near the intersection where Lila had disappeared, it had been tucked away in an evidence bag, preserved for nearly 16 years. In 2002, DNA testing on such a tiny sample was impossible. But now, with the introduction of massively parallel sequencing, forensic scientists could extract a full DNA profile from even a single cell. Dr. Marcus Halstead, the forensic laboratory director, was tasked with testing it. The process was meticulous and delicate. One misstep could contaminate the sample, destroying the fragile trace of evidence. The extraction revealed a male DNA profile, unique and previously unrecorded in the National CODIS system. This meant the perpetrator had never been arrested or convicted of a crime requiring a DNA sample. The breakthrough, however, was only the beginning. Using forensic genetic genealogy, Halstead's team began the painstaking process of tracing distant relatives in public genealogy databases. Each connection, each family tree, was mapped and cross-referenced, narrowing the potential pool. By mid-2019, investigators had identified a likely family cluster in northern Mississippi, a small town only an hour from Holly Springs. The next stage required careful fieldwork. Detective Marcus Reynolds, a member of the cold case unit, began discreet surveillance of several individuals within the family cluster. Notes, photographs, and even discarded items, cigarette butts, coffee cups, were collected without arousing suspicion. They had learned from prior cases that subtlety was critical. One false move could alert the suspect and potentially ruin decades of work. In October 2019, Reynolds received confirmation that left him momentarily speechless. The DNA from the cigarette butt collected in 2002 matched an individual named Clayton Whitaker, a 55-year-old local contractor with deep roots in the community. Whitaker was known in Holly Springs and surrounding areas as a reliable, even respected man. He had worked on home renovations, volunteered with local youth sports, and maintained a quiet, unassuming profile. No one suspected him of harboring the darkness revealed by a cigarette butt decades old. Investigators moved with deliberate care. They obtained a warrant to collect Whitaker's DNA from discarded items at his home and workplace. Each sample, each swab confirmed the match. The male, DNA from the roadside evidence, was unquestionably Clayton Whitaker's. The iron truth that had eluded Holly Springs for nearly 2 decades was now within reach, but how did he evade suspicion for so long? Examination of the original investigation revealed several missed opportunities. Witness statements from 2002 indicated a dark SUV in the area at the time, but descriptions were vague and no license plate was recovered. Whitaker had lived on a quiet street near the intersection and owned a similar vehicle, though investigators in 2002 had overlooked the connection. Small-town familiarity, it seemed, had blinded initial efforts. People trusted him, and that trust became a shield. On November 5, 2019, Clayton Whitaker was quietly taken into custody. Security cameras at his workshop captured the moment officers approached him, while he was assisting a neighbor with home repairs. Whitaker's expression shifted from mild surprise to resignation as he was informed of the arrest and the charges stemming from Lila Monroe's disappearance and murder. He cooperated quietly, offering no resistance, and requested legal counsel. For Holly Springs, the news spread like wildfire, leaving neighbors and former colleagues in disbelief. News outlets covered the arrest with intense interest. Social media amplified the shock as community members shared their experiences with Whitaker. Some remembered his kindness, the handyman who had helped repair porches and roofs. Others recalled the quiet demeanor that had made him seem harmless, even friendly. But for the Monroe family, the arrest was bittersweet. After 17 years of unanswered questions, there was relief. But the pain of loss could not be undone. Forensic evidence from the 2002 crime scene was re-evaluated under the guidance of modern technology. Fibers from Lila's clothing matched those found in Whitaker's vehicle. Soil samples traced to his property, aligned with samples taken near the roadside where she had disappeared. These pieces formed a mosaic of undeniable proof, linking Whitaker directly to the abduction. It was a meticulous reconstruction of events, layer by layer, combining physical evidence with the power of DNA and modern investigative techniques. Whitaker's past revealed more unsettling details. Investigators discovered that he had previously been questioned in 1998 in connection to another missing person case in the county, though charges were never filed due to lack of evidence. This pattern, previously obscured, painted a portrait of someone who had operated under the radar, exploiting the trust of a community that never suspected him. Throughout the proceedings leading up to trial, the Monroe family grappled with a complicated mix of emotions. Cynthia Monroe recalled the moments she had lit candles, prayed for her daughter's return, and endured community vigils that sometimes included Whitaker himself offering condolences and support. The duplicity of such actions was staggering, a cruel echo of the manipulation Lila had suffered in her final hours. The revelation of Whitaker's identity reignited public interest in the original investigation. Former detectives revisited their notes, reflecting on the limitations of the early 2000s, the lack of technological tools, and the reliance on human memory and eyewitness accounts. They acknowledged how easily a small town's familiarity could obscure the truth and how perseverance, coupled with modern science, had finally illuminated what had been hidden for so long. In early 2020, the Monroe family made a public statement. "We finally know what happened to Lila," Cynthia said, voice steady but trembling. "This does not bring her back. It does not erase the years of wondering, but it allows us to start finding peace." Her words resonated deeply with other families, enduring similar uncertainties, serving as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope that justice, though delayed, was possible. As the community came to terms with the arrest, the details of the investigation captivated audiences beyond Mississippi. Documentaries, news features, and investigative reports highlighted the role of forensic genetic genealogy, the meticulous preservation of evidence, and the tenacity of detectives willing to revisit cold cases. Lila Monroe's story became a symbol of the persistence of justice, the potential of modern science, and the importance of never abandoning hope. The narrative was far from over. Legal proceedings loomed and questions lingered. How would the courts handle a case separated from the original events by nearly 2 decades? How would the evidence preserved with care stand up in a modern trial? And how would Holly Springs reconcile the man they had trusted with the crimes he had committed, hidden in plain sight for 17 years? Before we continue with the final chapter, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. This case shows that even decades-old mysteries can be solved through careful investigation, technology, and the unwavering dedication of those refusing to let answers fade. It's a testament to the power of persistence and the courage of families who keep their loved ones alive in memory while awaiting justice. The courtroom in Holly Springs felt heavy with anticipation. News of Clayton Whitaker's arrest had spread like wildfire, leaving every resident grappling with disbelief, betrayal, and a cautious hope for justice. Families, neighbors, and friends of Lila Monroe gathered in a room that seemed too small for the weight of the emotions contained within it. Journalists lined the perimeter, recording every detail, while cameras projected the scene to overflow rooms for the hundreds who couldn't fit inside. For 17 years, this community had waited for answers. Now the answers had arrived, but with them came the unrelenting task of facing the truth. Whitaker appeared calm, almost eerily so, as he took his seat. His composure, honed over decades of living as a respected contractor and neighbor, was a stark contrast to the chaos his revelation had unleashed. He sat silently, occasionally glancing toward the Monroe family, his eyes devoid of visible remorse. In contrast, Cynthia Monroe's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the bench. Joseph Monroe's jaw tightened, the years of unanswered questions and grief etched into every line of his face. This was the moment that would finally provide clarity, truth after 17 long, harrowing years. The prosecution, led by Andrea Lawson, presented a meticulous case that combined decades-old evidence with modern forensic breakthroughs. The narrative began with Lila's disappearance on that September afternoon, the sudden absence in the familiar streets of Holly Springs, and the discovery of abandoned items along the roadside, her backpack, shoes, and a few personal belongings that would become critical evidence. Each item told a story, preserved with painstaking care by the original investigators. The crown jewel of the evidence, however, was the cigarette butt. Presented to the court, its significance was explained by Dr. Marcus Halstead, who testified to the revolutionary techniques used to extract Whitaker's DNA. This sample, collected in 2002, has provided the link we could not obtain at the time, he explained. Using forensic genetic genealogy, they traced the DNA through distant relatives, narrowing the suspect pool until Whitaker's profile was identified. The jury listened intently as he described the meticulous care required to prevent contamination and ensure that decades-old evidence could be trusted in. Court Detective Marcus Reynolds recounted the painstaking investigation following the identification of Whitaker. Surveillance, discreet collection of discarded DNA samples, and confirmation through multiple independent methods left no room for doubt. Every step was deliberate, Reynolds testified. This wasn't just about identifying the perpetrator. It was about ensuring that justice was based on undeniable facts. The prosecution then shifted to physical evidence linking Whitaker to the crime. Soil samples collected from the roadside where Lila disappeared matched soil found on the floorboards of Whitaker's workshop. Fibers from Lila's clothing were found inside his truck, preserved in a way that indicated a struggle had occurred. Even the smallest traces were explained in painstaking detail. forming a mosaic of evidence connecting the accused to the crime with irrefutable precision. Witnesses were called to provide context for Whitaker's seemingly ordinary life. Neighbors, friends, and colleagues testified to his public persona, helpful, polite, and deeply integrated into the Holly Springs community. They recounted instances of him volunteering for school events, repairing homes for families in need, and quietly providing support at local fundraisers. This contrast between public image and hidden violence became a key element of the prosecution's narrative. He exploited the trust of everyone around him, Lawson emphasized. His respectability was his shield, allowing him to commit a crime that would haunt a family for nearly 2 decades. Perhaps the most impactful testimony came from the Monroe family. Cynthia Monroe recounted the years of uncertainty, the vigils, and the unanswered calls to law enforcement. Her voice wavered as she described the relentless ache of not knowing what had happened to Lila. "Every year I lit a candle, hoping somehow she would find her way home," she said. "I never imagined the person sitting in this courtroom was the one responsible. I had trusted him as a neighbor, as a friend, and he betrayed us in ways we cannot measure." Her words resonated with the jury, painting the human cost of Whitaker's actions beyond the forensic data and legal proceedings. During cross-examination, Whitaker's defense attempted to undermine the evidence, arguing contamination and challenging the reliability of decades-old sample preservation. They pointed to his decades of positive community engagement, suggesting that such a person could not have committed a crime so horrific. But the prosecution dismantled each argument methodically. Multiple independent labs confirmed the DNA match. Preservation protocols were verified, ensuring no external contamination. The soil and fiber evidence corroborated the timeline and circumstances of the abduction. With every attempt to cast doubt, the prosecution reinforced the certainty of Whitaker's guilt. The trial also revealed disturbing insights into Whitaker's psyche. Investigators and prosecutors highlighted his pattern of inserting himself into the aftermath of crimes. Neighbors recalled him showing undue interest in law enforcement investigations and community vigils, often positioning himself close to grieving families under the guise of support. This calculated behavior, observed over 17 years, painted a chilling portrait of manipulation and control, emphasizing the depth of his deception. After days of testimony, the jury deliberated. The courtroom was tense, every whisper magnified by the weight of history. When the verdict was announced, guilty on charges of abduction and murder, the room seemed to exhale collectively. The Monroe family wept openly, releasing years of grief, anger, and fear that had festered in silence. Holly Springs experienced a mix of relief and shock. A trusted neighbor was revealed as a predator, but justice had finally been served. Sentencing followed swiftly. Clayton Whitaker received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Judge Eleanor Simmons, presiding over the case, addressed him directly. "For 17 years you haunted a family, a community, and a town. Your deceit compounded your crime. Justice is not measured in decades, but in truth finally revealed. The sentence today reflects the gravity of your actions and the lasting impact on those you victimized." The aftermath of the trial rippled throughout Holly Springs. Community members struggled to reconcile their memories of Whitaker with the truth of his crimes. Many sought counseling, grappling with the betrayal of someone they had trusted. The Monroe family began the long journey of healing, supported by local advocacy groups and law enforcement, who emphasized that the persistence of truth could bring solace even after years of uncertainty. Lila's legacy transformed into a source of awareness and advocacy. A memorial scholarship in her name was established at her former high school, focusing on youth empowerment and safety. Local authorities collaborated with national cold case units to develop educational programs, highlighting the importance of evidence preservation and community vigilance. Lila Monroe's story became a beacon, demonstrating that even when justice is delayed, it is not denied. Beyond Holly Springs, the case highlighted the transformative power of forensic genetic genealogy. Across Mississippi and the nation, law enforcement agencies revisited unsolved cases, inspired by the combination of perseverance, technology, and meticulous record-keeping that solved Lila's disappearance. Families of other missing persons found renewed hope, recognizing that a single preserved piece of evidence could eventually illuminate the darkest mysteries. Detective Marcus Reynolds reflected on the case in a post-trial interview. "We often tell families that we won't give up, but in reality we're also telling ourselves to keep looking, to keep believing. Lila's case proves that dedication matters. Evidence doesn't forget, and neither do we." His words echoed the broader truth. The persistence of justice is as much about human determination as it is about technology. As Holly Springs adjusted to the reality of Whitaker's conviction, the community also embraced a renewed commitment to vigilance and compassion. Annual memorials for Lila Monroe evolved into educational gatherings, combining remembrance with lessons on personal safety, awareness, and the significance of reporting suspicious behavior. The memory of a young life lost became a catalyst for proactive change, ensuring that her story continued to save others even after her death. For the Monroe family, the conviction did not erase 17 years of grief, but it offered closure. The knowledge of what happened to their daughter allowed them to mourn with understanding rather than uncertainty. Cynthia Monroe, speaking at a memorial service, encapsulated the community's sentiment. "We never stopped looking, never stopped loving her. Now finally, the truth has given her a voice, and in that we find some peace." The case of Lila Monroe remains a powerful reminder that even after decades, justice can prevail. Modern science, patient investigation, and unwavering commitment to the truth converged to solve a crime that once seemed beyond reach. Holly Springs learned that evil can hide behind the most ordinary of faces, but also that perseverance and technology can illuminate darkness, restoring faith in the possibility of resolution. For those following cold cases nationwide, Lila Monroe's story underscores a vital truth. Every piece of evidence matters. Every witness account can be critical, and every case deserves persistent attention. Science evolves, techniques improve, and time, no longer an enemy, can finally work in favor of truth. Families waiting decades for answers may yet see closure. To honor Lila's memory and the dedication of those who refuse to let her story fade, share this account and raise awareness of cold cases that can be solved. Each new technology, each patient investigation brings the promise of resolution. Justice delayed, though painful, is still justice, and Lila Monroe's voice now speaks across the years, offering a message of hope